welcome to our first video. I'm Bill Cox, owner of Comic Art Fans. Our site has been online since 2003 and serves as the hub for the original comic art collectors in North America and abroad to display their collections. Also to find artwork for sale or trade. We've been wanting to do interviews with collectors for a while just to kind of learn how people have gotten into the hobby and just talk about different collectors' tastes in artwork and artists that they like to collect. And for this first interview, I thought that it would be a good idea to have one of our longest members on the site, probably, in an ID number of in the 80s, I believe. So it's probably signed up within the first month, Miki Annamanthadoo. And welcome to the chat, Miki. Just to kind of get things started, I figured keep it real simple. When did you start collecting original artwork?
Well, I think it was at the early 80s, the first time I bought a piece of original artwork. I just got out of college. I had been to a New York Comic Con the previous year before I graduated, and it was called Creation Con back in those days. And I'd seen original art, and I knew that it was something I was interested in. Of course, back then I couldn't afford anything. I remember I saw Barry Windsor Smith there. He had some of his Conan art, and I think it was priced. My memory's kind of fuzzy, but whatever. If it was priced, the prices were above what I could afford. So after I graduated college, I started to work. I went back to New York, and I went back to New York comic convention, and I bought art. And there was a shop called Super Snipe. I was on I think it was on the Upper East Side around 80th or something like that in New York, that had pages of original art for sale like $5 a piece. There was nothing spectacular there. There was no superhero artwork. Actually, I did pick up some art of Tigra the Weird Woman that was from a Marvel preview magazine. So I picked up a few pages of that. And I think that was probably my first purchase of original art.
Who was the artist on those pages? Do you remember?
Tony DeZunga.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I traded those pages away to somebody on the Comic Art L that at that time was collecting Tigra and had put out a call for it. And since I didn't have much into the pages, and she wasn't I wasn't a big fan of the character. I traded those pages away.
Early purchases for me, I think I've probably traded away or sold most of the things that I bought. Do you find that a lot of the artwork that you bought in the first few years of collecting that you still own, or have you already?
Actually, I still own, and I believe I was looking at the page here. I'll see if this will show up on the cam. Can you see that?
Yeah. Can't make
so
out.
That's a page by Dave Cockrum from Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 201, I believe. Yes, 201.
Oh wow.
And that's one of the first pages of art I bought. I bought it at a small convention, and it was $10. So that I still have that, and I think let's see if I can find the auto portfolio.
Now, did you buy that from Dave Cockrum, or did you buy it from a dealer?
It was a dealer. The dealer had a few pages of art for sale, and that was one. I was a big Legion fan, so anything by Legion of Superheroes I was going to buy, and it just happened to be a Dave Cockrum page, who was like my hero because he was the guy that brought back the Legion.
Right.
So he was on the pedestal as far as I was concerned, just for that one act.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thrilled to buy that page, and of course, back in those days, you could buy tons of stuff, tons of comics for $10.
Right.
So it sounds like a really cheap price now, but you can buy comics for $1.50 a piece, etc. So it was a large purchase if you were a comic collector, relatively speaking, back in those days.
And I mean, did
Well,
you, since you were collecting comics though, did you know anybody else who had been collecting artwork, or were you kind of doing this on your own?
as far as I knew, I was the only person who was buying the stuff because at the comic conventions, I didn't see anybody else buying art, and most people were buying comics. All my friends that I knew at that time were that collected comics were just collected comics and not art. It
Hmm.
was much later that I found out that there were other people that actually collected art. I think the after I'd been in Richmond for a while, I was at one comic shop, and then I found one that was close to where I lived. So after a number of years, I changed to that one. I turned out the owner of that store collected comic art, and that's where I found the first person that I knew that actually collected comic art.
Like you said, if you don't really know anybody else who's collecting it, or you don't really know what the allure is to owning original comic artwork, it's easier just to kind of pass it by and pick up the comics or have an artist, you know, sign your comic books for you rather than buy artwork directly from them.
Yeah, and then of course you don't know what values are. So somebody said this is $20 or $10. You don't know if it's I'm just throwing that money away because I'm the only person who's buying this stuff, right? So at that time, there was no perceived value in comic art. Here's another piece I thought I'd show that I had picked up. This is one of the earliest pieces that I picked up, and let's see. You can see is that visible?
Oh yeah, the Miss Marvel
Yeah,
cover. Yeah,
yeah.
that was the unused one by Cockrum, I think.
By Cockrum and Layton.
Oh, Leighton, that's
So
right.
yeah, so it was 19. Yeah, I think it was 82. There was a local convention in Richmond, and Bob Layton was the guest, was the artist guest. He was the only big name artist there, and he had pages of art for sale, and he had that for $40, which was a lot back then. But because it was Cockrum, and Cockrum was my hero, obviously I bought it.
Right.
I didn't care whether it was published or unpublished. It didn't really matter. It was a beautiful image. Had my hero had drawn it, and so yeah, I was going to throw $40 away and buy it. So
Right. $40 is a steal for that cover. Oh man. Well, that
so
was
yeah,
so what was it like approaching Bob Layton back then, and and going through did he have like a portfolio, and I mean, how
he
easy?
had like loose pages of art.
Yeah.
There was no portfolio. There was just like a little stack of art pages. He had some Iron Man pages. I remember buying a couple Iron Man pages, and those I traded away.
Hmm.
I did buy Iron Man cover from him, and I also foolishly traded that away. But so many years later, but so I bought those two covers from him and a couple of pages, and the pages were like $5 or $10 a piece, and both covers were $40.
Wow.
So I spent like $100 with him,
Right.
which was my budget for the convention. So he got all my and he was very friendly, and I think, and to this day I joke with him that he had the classic Iron Man cover, Demon in a Bottle,
Hmm.
with him.
He did.
Yes, he had that cover with him, and I joked with him and I said that if I had $200 in my pocket, you would have sold that to me. He said no, it was never for sale. I said I spoke to you about a cover and I asked you how much for it, and you told me 200. And I said I only had $100 in my pocket, so obviously that was way above my budget. But I said if I had $200, I would have had that cover. And he shook his head. He said no, I didn't. I never offered that for sale. I'm always going to keep that. So we have a little disagreement on that one, at least in recollection.
Right, right. Well, that's funny that I mean, yeah, that would be an amazing cover to have owned back then or picked up from
Yeah.
him. But Bob's a good guy. I've had a lot of dealings with Bob over the years, and he's advertised on CAF, and I've picked up some art from him as well. So he's probably one of my favorite people to see at the shows, just because he's so approachable.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw him was I was in a show a couple of years ago in France, in Toulouse,
Hmm.
and he was one of the guests at that show. It's the last time I've seen him. I haven't seen him in any recent local shows.
And one of the great things about doing this is that it actually gives me the time to look at the artwork that people collect, because the trouble with owning CAF and managing it and everything is that while I sort of see artwork coming onto the site, a lot of times I don't get to appreciate the art like you guys get to. You know, if you're just browsing and doing searches, that's not usually, I don't get to spend the time to do that. So a couple days before the interview, I spent about an hour going through your gallery, and you know, it was amazing to see that you had over 1,000 pieces of art in your gallery today. And I'm curious, I mean, do you is everything in like the Itoya portfolios that you have here right now, or do you have some other way of storing artwork?
I have I probably got about 60 or so portfolios of art, or I haven't really counted them. I've started numbering my Legion portfolios and my Supergirl portfolios, and I know I have at least 20 of each of those. And then I have miscellaneous art in other portfolios. So I have about 60 portfolios of art, and then I have a flat file where I have a bunch of art pages in there.
Okay.
So,
and you have art on the walls too, it seems.
I have, most of the art I have on the walls are paintings.
Okay.
I don't have any comic, black and white
No
pen and ink pages framed and up on the wall. Everything I have on the wall up is paintings. So there are some are comic book covers, but most of them are science fiction or fantasy covers.
Right. And that was one of the things that I didn't know about you, that you collected science fiction artwork as well as comic book artwork. So when I saw that little video clip that you sent me, and I immediately recognized the Jim Burns painting, because I've seen his work a lot for various reasons over at that I mentioned that IX Art Show that's in Pennsylvania every fall, and he's usually there for that. And I've seen a lot of his work, well, just over the years. I mean, he's a big British science fiction painter.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. That's something I didn't know. And I don't think that, like, for instance, that piece of artwork was in your gallery, or that the Ken Kelly piece.
Yeah, well, the Ken Kelly is a prelim, and so and actually the Jim Burns is also considered a prelim, not a finished piece. And so I never thought of putting them up on CAF since they were prelims, and I liked them enough to frame them, put them on the wall, and so they never made my CAF gallery. So that's why they're not in CAF. But I really started reading science fiction at a young age. And I remember I was like 9 years old, and I read every science fiction book in the junior section of the library. And so I had to go to my mom and get written permission from her, and so I can give it to the library people, so they would allow me to go into the adult section of the library and read and borrow science fiction books from that section of the library. So I read a lot of Heinlein, Asimov, Clarke back when I was like 10 years old.
Right. Wow.
And I remember, I loved it, and I loved the covers in those books. And then later, when as a teenager, I started picking up the paperbacks, continue reading science fiction. I recognized, I didn't know who they were, but I recognized Jeff Jones's covers, Frazetta covers, Roy Frankel covers. And so, I could recognize the type of art in the covers, and I'd actually sometimes just buy a book based on the cover art. And so my first love of art was actually the covers on the science fiction paperbacks. And
but back then,
I read a lot of comics, but at the time I didn't really consider comic to be art.
Right.
You look at the pages, and they're not, they're just line drawings with 4 colors. And so it didn't register as art back in the days when I was, when I was 10, 11, 12 in those days. As I got older, I got a more appreciation of the art in the comics. I think it's when I first recognized Neil Adams and probably Steranko when I saw his art in a comic, that blew me away. And that was when I really started to delve into comic, into the art that was on the comics page, to look more closely at it and look at the types of art and artists that were actually drawing the pages.
Your love of science fiction is probably what is that somewhat what led you to like the Legion of Superheroes as being a comic title that you liked, because there's a lot of science fiction, I think, in those stories. I mean, they're interstellar and that sort of thing. Yeah,
that was the primary reason. The second reason was that the Legion of Superheroes was all inclusive back in those days. You had women superheroes who were equal of the men. And if you look at Saturn Girl, even back in the early comics, she was as much of an equal as any of the guys that was there. You had a fat guy, Bunsen Boy. You had a green person, right? So you had, it was, like, all inclusive type of thing. So that drew me into it, the fact that you had that type of team, rather than the type of teams you would see in, Justice League or America or Avengers. They were, different. You had, and they all had weird powers too. They weren't that, like Madridian Lad and, and some of these other different characters. The powers were so, in some cases bizarre. That was kind of, made it even more intriguing.
Right.
It was just just like the perfect storm of combination. And then one of the first comics I ever read that wasn't a Legion comic, but it was a Superboy comic with Superboy 89, which was the introduction of Mon-El.
Yep.
Read it really early, and then when the Legion rescued him from the Phantom Zone and brought him into the Legion, that of course cemented my love of the Legion. So,
right.
Yeah.
And Mon-El is your favorite character, right? I think.
Yeah, Mon-El is my favorite character in the Legion.
I've always been a Marvel guy, and I knew the Legion of Superheroes was a title I picked up and picked up back issues on from time to time, just because the stories and the characters definitely intrigued me. It was probably like why I love the X-Men. As so many different disparate types of characters with different powers coming together. But with Legion, the one time that I actually collected a solid run of their work or bought the book was when Giffen was doing the Darkness Saga. There was just something about his artwork and the covers that were done for that period that that I just couldn't not buy it. Even though I'm picking up copies of all Marvel books, I always picked up those Legion books that Giffen worked on. And it was just the way he drew the characters. It was the way he fit so many characters onto a page, and yet they were so small but so well drawn, and it was something about the artwork, honestly.
I think Giffen is like a master of composition.
Yeah.
And his actual finished style has changed over the years. So each era of Giffen art is different. But the one thing that remains is that he's very good at the composition. It almost reminds me of like Carmine Infantino.
Yeah.
But, his finished art, sometimes you look at it and you go, oh, that's a little weird. Everybody was kind of stretched out, and some of the features were slanted and things like that. But the compositions were just terrific. So I think Giffen reminded me a little bit of Carmine.
Sure.
In that regards.
No, I could see that. Funny, I always look for Giffen artwork from that period, online, just to buy, probably knowing that just to buy one. It's like what I do like to collect things that I've, like probably like you. I like to collect the books, art from the books that I've read that I like. And I assume that that Giffen's work is probably some of the hardest to get from that period of Legion, because I just don't see a lot of it.
Yeah, the Great Darkness era, which that saga, those are the hardest pages to get, because not only Legion fans desire them, but other fans like you who collect other stuff also are into Great Darkness. So those pages are scattered all over. It's probably every big name collector's probably got a couple in their collection.
Right.
So it's there's probably scattered all over the globe, all over the U.S. So that's why finding them is difficult. And when and they do come up for sale every so often, but when they do, they get snapped up immediately. They don't last. They don't stay around too long. I know if you look on the on CAF, you'll find that like one of my fellow Legion collectors, Dave Rash, has like over 200 pages of Giffen art in his gallery. Aidan Lacey's another big Legion collector, and he has close to 100 pages of Giffen art in his gallery. And I know that he has a substantial number of Great Darkness pages. I mean, I didn't check his gallery to see if every page that he actually owns is actually up in CF, but I've seen his collection, up front and personal, and I know the pages he has in his collection.
Right. I'll have to check both of those out, because I've I've been in both their galleries many times, but I don't know if I've actually looked specifically for Legion artwork in them. I mean, I know that I've seen a lot, but
Yeah,
Giffin's work in particular. But those are probably pages that in some cases end up, you know, maybe not even getting sold, but they're good for trade, because if you've got if as a collector who would own those pieces, if there was something else you wanted, and I'm sure get people who collect that artwork have probably let people know, like you, hey, if you're ever going to let that page go, let me know. So
right.
you've probably got a few people in mind when you have a page like that to sell or trade, whom you want to talk to, because they might have something else that you want.
Yeah,
So those pieces might never really come on the market.
that's correct. That's true. And the other thing too is that any pages that Aiden or Dave have normally are not available for trade or sale. Those are
Right.
two guys like me who kind of hold on to their art. So I know
They're
people
not
may
going
look,
anywhere, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Well, that answers that question, because I have always looked, honestly, since I started collecting. You know, primarily I wanted the certain Marvel titles, pieces from there, but that was really the only DC artwork that I was, you know, really, really wanted, and I've just never seen anything come up.
I have some pages that are not Giffen, but they are considered part of the Great Darkness saga. I have like a couple of Kurt Swan pages that, if you look at the collected edition of the Great, you know, the trade paperback of the Great
Yeah,
Darkness saga, that story's included in there.
it is. Yeah.
So I have pages from that thing. I don't believe I have any Great Darkness pages.
So when I was looking through your gallery, I saw that you had the complete book to Adventure 372. And
Correct.
now, did you buy that book complete, or did you put it together
Yes.
over a period of time?
No, I bought the book complete from a collector who had it complete and who had bought it complete and who had it in his possession for some, like, at least 20 years. And and from what I understand, this collector is a very, let's say, man of means. He has a lot, you know, and
Hmm.
he has a huge collection, and he's been collecting art for, you know, 30 years or more. And he had this complete story, and decided he wanted to sell it, and he was only willing to sell it as a complete story. He was not going to sell page by page. He was not going to break the cover up from the story. It was all going to be one package. And he contacted the art dealer that he had done a lot of business with over the years, and told the art dealer what his price was. And then the art dealer started to shop the story around. And I believe that at least three people before me were offered the art, and they turned it down. And when it came to my turn, I said yes, and I had to do a few things, like I had some mutual funds I had to sell so I could fund it, but um, that's what I did. I
All right. Now,
decided
did you actually have to sign an agreement that said you wouldn't break up the book, or
no,
the
no. The
the deal?
collector didn't. He didn't care what happened to it after he sold it, but
Oh,
he just wanted to sell his one package. He had a specific price in mind that he wanted, and he was not going to take less. He's not available for counter offers, and
mhm.
so it was like, this is the price, take it or leave it.
And you
And
haven't broken it up either, just because you know that was an issue that you wanted.
well, it's like this is like, you know, people talk about grails,
Hmm.
and sometimes you think about this stuff, and you think, oh well, I'm not going to put it down as a grail, because there's just no way, if it ever came available, one, I'll be able to afford it, or two, I'll be able to outbid somebody else with deeper pockets than me for it. You know, so you know, so I never thought that I'd ever have an opportunity to buy something like this. So it's like, once I've got it, no, I'm not going to break it up. I'll sell every other piece of art I own before I break that up.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's you know, that complete book is like now my grail. So you know, so I think I was talking to Mark Wade last weekend, and he said, well, if the house is on fire, which portfolio you're going to grab as you run out the house?
Hmm.
Of course, I said, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And he said, well, what? They said, well, what's the next one you grab that you can grab two? So then we had a little discussion about that one. So
Yeah. Well, what was it?
well, I have another portfolio art with this portfolio with the Miss Marvel cover in it.
Hmm.
That I call that my, well, I don't have a name for it, but what it is that there's certain artists that I like, but I don't collect the stuff they work on per se.
Hmm.
So if I manage to get one piece by them that's great, I stick it in that portfolio.
All right.
Yeah. So like I give you an example. I don't collect Mike Mignola, and but I managed to come across a Mike Mignola cover, and if I can show that to you, the Blue Beetle.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's a Mike Mignola cover, and then opposite it is a Steve Ditko cover from
Right.
Charlton.
Yeah.
So those are artists that I don't collect per se, but I managed to come across some covers by them over the years, and so that's I think that's my only Mignola piece that I own.
Hmm.
I have some other Ditko pieces, minor pieces, but that's of course, the major Ditko piece in my collection. So so I've got those types of art in that portfolio.
No, I think that
And
that's a worthy portfolio to grab second for sure. How
yeah,
long have you owned the Ditko cover?
this will cover probably about 15 years or so. I actually bought it from Paul Handler, who's another collector.
That's a beautiful cover.
Yes, he's asked me a couple of times if I'm willing to sell it back.
Right. There's always art you regret selling. That's for sure. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so the other thing was I saw you collected a lot of artwork from Colleen Duran, and I've never read A Distant Soil, but I've always been interested in it. And was that the convention where you bought the artwork from Bob Layton, the same one where she had entered an art contest?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob was the judge with the art contest on that. She must have been like 14 or 15 at the time, and she won the art contest, and I think so. I took note of the name at the time, and then when I saw her name in being published, when I saw it, so I had to pick up the books and that's how I got into Distant Soil. And our family's from Virginia,
Hmm.
so she was at some of the Virginia conventions that I attended later. So I was able to to meet her and buy art directly from her, and that's how I started my Colleen Duran collection. And actually, she was just here this last weekend. We had a local convention in Richmond called CalaxiCon, and she was at convention, and I picked up a piece again from her. Then I went there to see her and talk to her, but didn't expect to buy any art. But she had of course, once you're there and you look in the portfolio, you end up buying stuff. So,
but yeah, Colleen's work has always been I don't know. I really appreciate it a lot, and she's had a gallery on Cap for a long time. And but Distant Soil has always been on my list, so I'm gonna have to go back and pick up. I'm sure they're in trades by now, right? At some degree, right?
yeah. Well, I think she put out. There was I think four. There were originally she'd put out. I think there was 4 trades she'd put out for Distant Soil, and then she's republished the first 2 trades.
Okay.
So the first 2 trades were republished recently, and then she's working on republishing the third one.
Which show are you going to be going to the New York Comic Con this year?
Yeah, I've actually attended most of the New York Comic Cons over the years. I didn't attend the first one. I think from the second one onwards, I've been at most of them.
Okay.
And usually I only go 1 or 2 days. I usually go just Thursday or Friday or just Thursday, mainly because I can't stand the crowd on Saturday.
Right.
And my Sunday, everything's being wrapped up and people leaving early anyway. So Sunday's almost like a dead day. So,
yeah.
Thursday, so I've got my tickets for Thursday and Friday. this year, and I'll be there. I said I usually attend the East Coast Comic Con, so I'm always in Baltimore. Heroes is next weekend, so I'll be at Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think over the years I've only missed maybe 2 Heroes cons since like about 2001. Same thing for Baltimore Con. I've only missed 1 Baltimore Con since Baltimore Con started. And
No, I mean, Heroes, yeah, I haven't been to Heroes in probably 10 years. I always used to work that into like a Father's Day trip to Myrtle Beach or something. And
right.
it probably was always my favorite show to meet artists and purchase artwork. I mean, and I know Baltimore, which I've never been to, is considered to be, another really great show for meeting artists. I mean, outside of those 2 shows, I mean, are there other shows that you think are really good for collectors to purchase artwork from?
I went for the first time this year. I went to C2E2.
Mm-hmm.
I had a blast there, so that's a good show for meeting and buying art.
Okay, I've never been to that,
but it's kind of expensive because you have to stay at you're right. It's right downtown, and the hotels aren't cheap right around the convention center.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try to go for a couple days to New York this year. So, and Thursday, Friday is probably what I was looking at as well. So maybe I'll be able to see you there.
Yeah, I'll probably spend my entire time in Artist Alley because, except for maybe a couple of times, maybe just to pop up the dealer's floor to check the dealers. But the other thing too is that they've been having this comic art con, the New Jersey show.
Right.
That I think Joe Vettery produces, and most of the comic art dealers are at that show. So Albert Moy and etc. Usually, and Mike Barkey and company are at those shows. So I see them at those shows. So and there's probably going to be one in September, which I'm going to go to. So that's going to be a month before the New York show, approximately.
Right.
So I'll probably see most of them there and see most of what they have for sale. So, so going up to dealers, and is not a priority.
Right, because you can get the artwork from them a month beforehand at that show.
Right.
No, that's a good way to approach it.
Yeah, and so most of the time I'll probably spend in Artist Alley.
Yeah, I don't believe that's probably the best Artist Alley at any show in the country right now, as far as my from the shows that I've been going to for the last 5 to 10 years. San Diego's has dwindled down to little to nothing, and I think that New York has definitely cornered the market on having. It's a difficult floor to get around because it is so busy, but that's because they have so many incredible people that only go to that show. They attract a lot of European artists because they're on the West or on the East Coast there. So you end up with people that you wouldn't see anywhere else are there and can take the time to be there.
Yeah, I think a lot of European artists can fly right into New York and get to that show, whereas the other shows like Heroes, it's not an easy flight to get to Heroes from Europe. You got to fly to Atlanta, then to Heroes, then to Charlotte, or New York and then to Charlotte. So I think New York is popular for the European artists, and a lot of them attend that show. And I think their Javits Center is under some reconstruction, and when the reconstruction is finished, I think they'll have a bigger space for Artist Alley. Right now, the Artist Alley is a little bit cramped because they've got smaller space that they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once the construction is done on the Javits Center and they move to the new to the new room, they'll have more space.
It's hard to imagine cramming more artists into that show, but great for us.
Well, I know that a lot of artists tried to get into the show and are locked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of posts of people online saying that they applied to get to the New York show and they were turned down. So. Yeah,
I think I saw that too. New York also has that art auction, I believe, on Friday evening. I think that they do every year. It's kind of a charity auction, but I know that they always attract, you know, really good pieces. And usually at least the auctions that I've sat in, we usually get about, you know, 60 to 80, sometimes 100 collectors in their bidding. So I think they do pretty well with that.
Yeah, I've actually not attended any of the auctions,
Mhm.
the on-site auctions. I mean, same thing with Heroes. Heroes has an on-site auction, and I think I've only attended a couple times. Because what I find in a lot of those auctions is that sometimes the people just overbid on stuff. and
Right.
yeah, so
Well,
and
it's exciting when it's happening right in front of you, you know, versus,
yeah,
you know, on eBay or Heritage or Comic Link when you're doing, you know, placing your bids that way. It's easier to get up and walk away and not make that bid you're going to regret later. But,
yeah,
you know, but
yeah,
I think they have drinks and stuff available, so it makes that happen a little bit more frequently.
yeah.
Funny. All right, Mickey. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time today. And, you know, I think when we post this, I'll probably have it on the site and whatnot, but we'll probably do I might have some follow-up questions that I do, and we just incorporate that, you know, into part of the interview in a different way. But I appreciate you taking the time today, and
Okay,
nice to see you again.
all right.
And yeah, I hope to see you at a show soon.